to create an economy that works for everyday Americans, to lower costs, to continue our fight for better paying jobs, safer communities, and of course, to defend democracy and fight for reproductive freedom. With our objective to continue to put people over politics, President Biden and the administration released a budget early this week that will do at least three important things: costs for everyday Americans and work that has already been done, drive down the high price of life-saving prescription drugs for millions of Americans. It will to build an economy, the middle out and the bottom up, that is focused on growing the middle class and all those who aspire to be part of the middle class throughout America. Perhaps most importantly, President Biden and House Democrats are focused on protecting and strengthening Social Security. Notwithstanding what the former president down in Mar-a-Lago to say about security and Medicare, these are not entitlement programs. Social are earned benefits that the American people work hard for throughout their entire lives and pay into, with the promise that as they become older Americans, they'll have access to Social Security and Medicare so they can live a life with dignity and respect. Social Security and Medicare are quintessential parts of the American dream. Donald Trump and the extreme MAGA Republicans want to end Social Security and Medicare as we know it. It's not a secret. They have said it publicly over and over and over again, including this week. And that will establish a clear contrast between President Biden and House Democrats, who are going to fight to protect and strengthen Social Security and Medicare, and the extreme MAGA Republicans who want to take these things away, just like they ended Roe v. Wade and reproductive freedom for tens of millions of Americans all across America. If it can happen to Roe v. Wade, then of course the extreme MAGA will continue to try to detonate things in the United States that we believed were untouchable. And we're going to push back aggressively against it. Questions?
The House just passed the TikTok bill. How do you want the Senate to handle it?
Well, the House passed the bill in a decisive and bipartisan fashion, and it's now appropriate for the evaluate the merits of the legislation. I don't support a ban on TikTok. The legislation did not ban TikTok. It's simply the vestige of TikTok so that this social media platform can be owned by an American company that would protect the data and the privacy of the American consumer from malignant foreign interests like the Chinese Communist Party.
Senator Chris Coons yesterday sort of poured cold water on the urgency of passing the TikTok bill in the Senate, basically saying that it's more urgent that the House passes the Taiwan, Ukraine aid, Israel aid. Any concerns about the Senate trying to either hold this bill hostage for that one, so that it forces the House to?
I agree with Senator Coons that if my colleagues actually care about America's broad and national security interest, thing Republicans can do is to bring bipartisan, comprehensive national security bill, which will support for our Democratic allies, Ukraine, and in the Indo-Pacific, Chinese Communist Party, and at the same time assistance to civilians in Gaza and other parts of the world who are in harm's way through no fault of their own. If my Republican colleagues care about of national security challenges that the American people face, the most significant thing they can do is to put the bill on the floor for an up or down vote. And we all know that it would pass with substantial Democratic support.
But do you think that the Senate should hold that bill, the TikTok bill, hostage until the House takes care of this bill?
Who am I to tell the Senate what to do in terms of its own agenda for consideration? We pass bills, send it. The ball is now in the of the senators, and I trust Leader Chuck Schumer.
Thank you. So you met yesterday with President Poland and Speaker Johnson, and President Duda told us that he made the case for passing the supplemental. Did Speaker Johnson indicate that any shift in his position? How did he react?
Speaker Johnson continues to maintain that he understands the importance of passing the national security bill and funding the Ukrainian effort, which has been brave and valiant in pushing back against Russian aggression. We cannot allow Vladimir Putin to succeed in Ukraine, as it will undermine America's national security and that of the West, NATO, and democratic allies throughout the world. We'll see what happens. I think the clock is ticking, and we have to get the bipartisan national security bill over the finish line before we leave town next Friday, March 22nd. Before we leave town. It's reckless to do otherwise.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Going back to TikTok, spoke to a few members who felt like the bill was rushed to the floor. Do you share those concerns, and what's your message to those members who felt like this process was rushed?
As I indicated in my statement, there were very principled concerns raised by with respect to timing and process, and I have with that.
Thank you. Now, ByteDance does not TikTok be banned in the U.S. What's your message to American citizens whose jobs may be at risk, citizens who have
Support a TikTok ban.
Just still seem to be an issue in funding talks, and I was just curious if you discussed about how it's funded that you think could win bipartisan support, and has leadership already
Appropriations to try to see if an agreement can be reached. So I'm going to defer to Rosa DeLauro, who I've got full faith and confidence in terms of her ability to navigate the challenges that remain in all of the outstanding appropriations issues. And things are moving in the right direction, and hopefully we'll get resolution well in advance on the UNRWA issue, on a whole host of other issues before next Friday. Go back to this side. Thanks.
Yeah, on Gaza, there's a number of Democrats who think the law is that the president needs to cut off military offensive supplies for Israel's war unless Israel opens up the spigots of humanitarian aid and lets trucks and aid to get through, so we're not sending airdrops. Do you agree? Do you think that the president is obligated under the law to cut off those military weapons for Israel until the aid is allowed to flow freely to Gaza?
I support the president's perspective that he's going to, as is, take care that the laws are faithfully executed. And as he's indicated, he's going to continue to support Israel's right to defend itself. And of course, to Israel is ironclad, while at the same time making sure we can get the hostages out and surge humanitarian assistance in help the civilians in Gaza who are in harm's way through no fault of their own, as well as civilians in other theaters of war across the country. across the world.
Heard from some of your members who are worried that, given the lobbying campaign that preceded this TikTok vote, young voters will believe it's a ban, whether it is or not, and will punish the Democratic Party for joining it in force, given that they overwhelmingly vote for Democrats in elections. Are you concerned? Is that a valid concern that there will be a backlash from young voters to this?
I don't support a TikTok ban, and I have every confidence in the world that whatever the course of this legislation takes as it goes over to the Senate, that TikTok will remain available to those who continue to enjoy the platform at this very moment.
Yes, looking ahead to the New York presidential primary, are you concerned there's going to be a large uncommitted or blank vote in the Democratic primary?
No, I wasn't concerned about that in advance of President Biden's State of the Union address, and I'm certainly not concerned about it now. President Biden, as they say down south, showed up and showed out. He gave performance. It was strong. It was serious. It was substantive. It was with energy at a high level from the beginning through the middle and all the way through the very end. And when I've been back at home, as well as on the road, the enthusiasm that I've seen for President increased significantly. It was high before amongst many base Democratic voters, but it has increased significantly in discernible ways subsequent strong performance of the union.
Thank you, Mr. Security Supplemental. It does seem like I'm still here, and I'm wondering if there's any push that you're able to make or Democrat make. Their petition bill is an option. What else can you do as Democrats to move this, knowing that the speaker is sort of not willing at this point to engage in the discharge or engage in putting it on the floor?
Yeah, I would take issue with politely with the notion that there are dueling discharge petitions. One has 15 signatures, the other is about at 180. That's not dueling discharge petitions. It's a reaffirmation that the only clear path is to put the bipartisan, comprehensive, Senate-passed bill on the House floor for an up or down vote, and it will pass overwhelmingly with Democrats and Republicans. That is the only path forward. And this week further validated that dynamic. We cannot allow Ukraine to be overrun by Russia, because what will happen is that American lives are likely to be on the line unless we were to believe that if Putin wins in Ukraine, he stops there. When he didn't stop in Georgia and he didn't stop in Crimea. Breaking news, he's not stopping in Ukraine if he's allowed to be successful. And in that neighborhood, it's filled with NATO, including Poland. This is one of the reasons why President Duda was so strongly supportive of making sure we continue to support the Ukrainian effort, because democracy and the free world are on the line against and tyranny. It's time for my House Republicans to believe that supporting Ukraine is the right thing to do, to break with the pro-Putin MAGA extremists who are ascendant in there, and partner with us to do the right thing and support up or down on the national security package that was passed by the Senate.
To follow up on a different topic, if I could, House Republicans on the administration committee yesterday launched a sort of hearings. Is that Democrats are supporting? Can you talk a little bit about what?
The effort is the American people that the January 6th insurrection was not a violent riot inspired by the former president as part of an effort to halt the peaceful transfer of power is just another extreme MAGA Republican political stunt. At what point will my Republican colleagues choose to actually focus on issues that matter? From the very beginning of this Congress, House Democrats have made clear we're going to find bipartisan common ground on any issue with our Republican colleagues whenever and wherever possible in order to solve problems for hard-working American taxpayers. We need less chaos in Washington, D.C. and more common sense. And I don't know why my Republican colleagues continue to put political stunts over the American people. We should be putting people over politics. That's what House Democrats are going to do. Focus on being able to access affordable housing, addressing the challenges at the border, fixing our broken immigration. It should. The January was a violent insurrection that American people could see and watch in real time eyes. This political stunt in trying to convince the American people that the violent insurrection was legitimate political discourse or a normal tourist visit is a joke. It's embarrassing. What is wrong with these extremists? You keep losing elections. Partner with us. Let's solve problems on behalf of the American people. Thank you, everyone. Oh, last question? Sorry.
Yes, thank you. Wanted to follow up on the situation in Gaza. President Biden said over the weekend that an Israeli invasion of Rafah would be a red line that the U.S. can't support. Israel has said that there are remaining Hamas commanders and brigades in Rafah, and it needs to carry out an operation there to eliminate them. Do you agree with the president on this?
Support everything that the president said during the State of the Union address and his general perspective that what we have to do is make sure that Hamas is decisively defeated. It's a brutal terrorist organization. And unless we defeat Hamas, there is no possibility for peace. But at the same time, we have to make sure we get the hostages out and humanitarian assistance in to Gaza decisively. Thank you.